Arizona Sonoran Copper has a former producing copper mine in Arizona in the United States of America. It's known as the Cactus Mine. Today we have a compliant resource of 3.3 billion pounds of copper in the ground. And significantly for Arizona, we have a permit to take water for the next 50 years. And luckily there's sufficient water in an aquifer immediately below the open pit. We've completed a PEA in the last 18 months with very robust economics, and we're currently in the process of completing a pre-feasibility study, which will come to the market shortly. And then over and above that, right next door, we have a very exciting exploration play known as Park-Salia that we think will probably double the size of the resource in the next 3 to 4 months when the information becomes public. Well, those drilling results related to the infill drilling at Cactus East, where we're drilling down to 125-foot centers so we can move that resource into a measured category. That becomes important because ultimately when the pre-feasibility study comes out, the measured category can then move into the proven reserves. When you do project financing, the first 5 to 6 years of the project are very important because ultimately that's when you need to be paying back the creditors. And of course, they like to see a plan in the first 5 years built from reserves, which are in the proven category, hence we have more confidence in them. So the results were exceptional, but they really confirmed what we had already put out to the market in previous releases. Well, first of all, I think the management is very, very important. I think you want to look for management that is very credible, has a very good track record of delivering exceptional results for the shareholders. You can have a world-class discovery, a world-class ore body, but if you have poor management, they'll destroy value. If you have something which is relatively average, but you have a top quality management team, they can make significant returns for the investor, particularly the retail investor. So, those are a key thing that I'd look for. I think also, the commodity itself, what are the long-term prospects for that commodity? I think right now, obviously, with the energy crisis and the drive for decarbonization, obviously the battery style metals I think are quite important and are going to become even more important as we move forward over the next several decades. And then I think lastly, geographical location is also very important. If you can have a project which is in a very tier 1 jurisdiction, very stable from a socioeconomic and political perspective, I think that significantly de-risks the project. Well, I think it all starts at the top of the executive, and the companies really need to have, it ingrained in their culture, their policy and their procedures. I think companies that have very strong ESG strategies with strong pillars, particularly focused in on the environment. I think that can obviously give the investors a little bit more confidence that at the end of the day, the company is going to be run in an ethical and professional manner. Well, I think, as we go forward, if we think specifically about copper, today the world uses anywhere between 25 million tons and 30 million tons of refined copper on an annual basis. In the next 10 to 15 years, that's predicted to double to almost 50 million tons. The reality of the situation is that there just isn't enough copper being produced at this point in time to meet that demand. The other challenge the industry has is that on a greenfield project from discovery to actually having it permitted and put into commercial production can actually take 10 to 15 years. So there's definitely going to be a supply gap, and I would say that the only way that that supply gap can be met is really through incentivizing existing mines to remain in production and look at potentially increasing their production. And the way to do that is obviously through seeing a commodity price which is actually going to be much higher than what we see today. So for those copper companies that are in production today and those ones which are close to production in the next 2 to 3 years, I think investors are going to realize significant gains there in the next 5 to 10 years as the world looks to decarbonize and move towards more green energy. Well, I think lastly, we touched on Park-Salia, which is an exploration property right next door. It's not currently in a compliant resource. The exploration results have been spectacular. We believe in the next month we'll be able to put out a maiden resource estimate on that, and we would anticipate to be able to show the market an additional potentially 3 billion pounds of copper in the ground, which will almost double the current resource. And If you consider the companies being valued at 3 cents a pound of copper in the ground, that could add an additional 90 million US dollars in enterprise value to a company that today only has a market cap of 150 million Canadian dollars.